So we're so excited to have you all. We have two special guests, Emily Belle Freeman and Barbara Gardner, and they're here for their Inklings event, the Priesthood Power of Women study group. Well, it's the Priesthood Power of Women study group. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about Emily. Emily Freeman took her first creative writing class in high school and has loved writing ever since. She finds great joy in studying the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Her deep love of the scriptures comes from a desire to find their application in everyday life. I think that's what we all find absolutely endearing about Emily, is she makes the unrelatable relatable. She's the author of several books, including even this. There's nothing Emily, now this is fun, there's nothing Emily enjoys more for breakfast than a bowl of coconut ice cream, raspberries, and chocolate chips. That's a great breakfast. Other favorites include parades, vacations, firework displays, and going for a long walk with a good friend. Emily and her husband, Greg, live in Lehigh, Utah, and are the parents of 5 children whom she adores. Okay, Barbara Gardner is an associate professor of religious education at Brigham Young University. She served as the first female institute director and coordinator for seminaries and institutes in Eastern Massachusetts. She received her PhD in instructional psychology, and her master's degree is in educational leadership and foundations. They're very smart.
No,
I love this. I need to hang out with her. Her new book, The Priesthood Power of Women, is available now with a little asterisk that we'll talk about later.
No, let's talk about it now.
Okay, I'll tell you right now. It is such a book in popular demand that we do not have it. The entire company's out, Amazon is out. It was so desired by many, and it is being reprinted. So if you see a copy of the book tonight and it looks like this, don't think you just scored, because it's not. This is a whole nother book. It might be Harry Potter, I don't know, but it's not The Priesthood Power of Women, so don't buy it. But because of that, we have a coupon that we're going to give you all at the end for 15% off that book, because you can pre-purchase it and we'll give it to you. Also, 2 books of Emily's, Don't Miss This, in the Book of Mormon, and Don't Miss This journal. So we'll talk about that at the end too, but just keep that in the back of your mind. All right, now, Barbara, back to Barbara. She was born and raised in Salem, Oregon. She served a Spanish-speaking mission in the Los Angeles Temple Visitor Center. Barbara is married to Dustin Gardner and absolutely adores her 100+ nieces and nephews. That's impressive.
True.
Okay, so welcome. We're going to turn the time over to Emily, and then we'll talk at the end again.
Hi. Okay, you guys, I am so excited you came. Are you excited to be here? Don't you kind of want to just look around and think, these are all of our friends who are studying Inklings together, which I love. I just love the thought of that, finally being able to meet face to face. I think we're doing something really unique on Instagram that I don't know if has ever been done before, for the fact that the comments is where most of what is happening and not the post, and I don't think that is common to Instagram. But I told you before, and I will tell you again, the comments are my favorite part of this study right now, and I've actually been thinking about that a lot, and that is where I want to start tonight talking. So, my great-grandmother lived on South Temple and 7th East a long time ago, because she's my great-grandmother. And she has this chest that is so awesome, and you kind of wish I would just bring the entire chest and pull everything out of it, because you love the chest so much. But since I was a little girl, when I would go visit my grandma Belle, we would get out the chest, and we would go through everything in the chest. My great-grandmother's wedding dress is in there, her husband's tuxedo is in there, blessing dresses from all the babies are in there. It's like this magical chest. But in the chest, there is this cute little purse that looks like this. And this has long been my favorite part of the chest. And does anyone love to read proper romances in here besides me? Okay, so everyone's like, should we admit it or not? We don't know. Okay, you know the tradition of calling cards. Those of you who read those books, you know, because you see it. In the olden days, a long, long time ago, when you went to someone's house, you would leave a calling card that you would in there and have your name on it. And a lot of times what would happen is women would host days of the week when you could come and visit at their house. And then you would be invited to come, and when you left, you would leave your card. And then your card would have your name, so the hostess can remember you had been there. And then at the bottom of your calling card, it would say what day you were receiving visitors. And then someone could come to your house. Well, this is my grandmother Pearl's calling card case. That is what is in here. But it's about to get even better, you guys, because in her calling card case, it actually has her calling card in there. And several more. If I wanted to hand them out, I could to all of you. And on the calling card, it says, Mrs. Duncan McVicky. And then it says Wednesdays. And then it says 702 East South Temple Street. And so on Wednesdays, you could just go to her parlor and you could just sit in there and have a conversation with other women. And I was reading about calling cards a little while back. And what I was reading talked about, it kind of was like social media for them, were these calling cards that they passed back and forth. And it was really common for them to write comments on the back of the calling card for the woman who they had visited. And they would share their comments back and forth. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, this is what we're doing right now. That's exactly what's happening. I have a little Thursday parlor. My parlor is open. Whoever wants to come and visit on Thursdays. And then you just leave your name and a comment card at the bottom. Don't you think that's so awesome? We're like reliving my dreams as I was this little tiny person, and I wanted to have one of these so bad, and calling cards. And now you are all participating in that. And as I thought about that, I was thinking there are 3 things that I'm loving about this Inklings group. And that is what I want to talk about very first. And the first one is that connection that we are making. And I don't know if this is happening for any of you, but I was talking with a group of friends earlier today, and we were talking about how we're starting to recognize each other's names in the comments. Like, there's certain people that you're like, oh, I remember her, and one day we just all want to get together, and so you can meet all the people who you've been commenting on their comments the whole time. But I love the fact that we can connect wherever we are, throughout the entire world. And I love when you read on the comments, if any of you notice when someone's like, and I'm from Austria, and I'm from Germany, and you think to yourself, I am having a small study group with women all over the entire world. Just pretend like it's small. It feels like it is. And it's in my parlor, so it feels intimate, right? The second thing that I love actually comes from a scripture in Alma 32. And I looked at the chapter and I forgot to look at the verses, but in Alma 32, it talks about when you study, there are 2 things that will happen to you. And one is that it will expand your heart, and the other one is it will enlarge your soul. And I feel like that is what is happening right now. That we are experiencing that expanding and enlarging that is taking place because of this opportunity we've been given to study together. And the last thing that I want to talk about, the third gift, is I feel like we really are experiencing the blessing of our prophet. I just wanted to pull out from my study, and I don't know how many of you have had a chance to download the journal for the study yet. I find myself going back to this page over and over again. Does anybody else? This promise from the prophet that he gave at the end of the conference, and he said, I would like to leave a blessing upon you, that you may understand the priesthood power with which you have been endowed, and that you will augment that power by exercising your faith in the Lord and in his power. And I thought to myself, I love that blessing has 2 parts of it. And the first part of that blessing is that we would be able to understand the priesthood power with which we have been endowed. And I feel like that is one of the things that is happening with this group, is over time, we are beginning to understand that priesthood power, and we will continue to be able to understand that priesthood power. I also want to say really quickly that a couple things happen everywhere I go. One is people will stop me, and they will just say the word Inklings to me with a little grin, as if we're in a secret club. That is what it feels like. And my response every time, I can't help it, is, aren't we having fun? Because seriously, every time I get on my Instagram, and I'm not a big fan of Instagram, it overwhelms me. Technology is not my specialty. And so for a long time, getting on Instagram was more something I had to do because I felt like it was my job and less about a place I wanted to be in until we started this group. And I find myself at night looking so forward to when I climb in my bed and I'm just going to read these comments that are so uplifting. And as I was talking with my friends today, they were saying, isn't it unique to have a community where you can trust that every comment will lift you when you read on those posts? And I love that we have created a space like that, where we can gather together and we can lift. The last thing I want to tell you is this. I woke up this morning, and the thought on my mind after I posted, and I wrote a little bit about this in my post, was I just really want to pray for the gift of knowledge that President Nelson talked about. And I noticed as I was reading in Inklings that another woman had said she had woke up and was praying for a different one of the words that we were studying. And someone else had said she had woke up and was praying for a different word that we were studying. And I thought to myself, for just a minute, do you want to think about our Father in heaven who sees a group of women who every day are praying, help me to know more about this word. Help me to know more about this phrase. And to look over this whole group and think, here is a group of women who is following the call of a prophet. And I just want you to know how grateful I am to be doing that with all of you right now. So I wanted to start out as we get going, and I'm going to watch my phone because I want to make sure we leave time for everything that we have to do. And I want to just talk for a minute about what we just learned in Doctrine and Covenants 25. Where we've spent our time this month. And each of you should have gotten a word. Did you get a word from the back tables? And hopefully you picked it and it is your word for this time, for this season, whatever that is. And I want to stop for a minute and just think about each of those words and the power of those words. And what I want you to do is I'm going to give you just a few minutes. This is one of my favorite ways to teach, so don't be overwhelmed. You're about to get to know your neighbor, everybody. I want you to, for just 2 minutes, introduce yourself to your neighbor, and I want you to talk about the word you chose and why you chose it. Okay? Go. Everybody go. I'll bring you back in a minute. Okay, let's talk for a minute about what you've learned. So what I'm going to let you do right now, and for those who are watching at home after the fact, who are not a part of this event, we're going to let you think about your own word. If you're with friends, because you might be, take some time right now as we're doing this to do the same thing in your group, and you'll just watch for when we pick back up again. But what I'm dying to know is, what were some of the words? What were some of the standouts for you? And if you just want to stand up and say it, I'll repeat it, unless you're really brave and you want to come up to the microphone, because anyone dare to come up to the microphone. I had a lady tell me today, if I come, are you going to make me talk in the microphone? I said no, I am not. So you just tell me, and I'm going to repeat it, so you've got a record of it. What were some of the standouts? If you had to sum up section 25 and what you know now compared to what you knew 4 weeks ago, and if that has to do with your word or not your word, it doesn't matter. I want to know how you've grown in the last 4 weeks. What would you say? Does anyone want to share? How have you grown? Awesome. Okay. Okay, being more intentional, and particularly being more intentional about what you are seeking for. That is awesome. Someone else. Yeah. Oh, that is so good. It is labor, and we are laboring with the Spirit. And I'm actually glad you said that, because I've had the opportunity in the past month to talk to so many groups of women. And the number one thing they say is, I am overwhelmed right now. I'm overwhelmed by what we've been asked to do. And to think about that, and what does that look like, and how do we do all of that? How do we do all the things we've been asked to do? What does that look like in our life? And I've been thinking so much about that because I keep hearing it. And the thought about it is a labor. We're actually leaning into this. We're working into it. And I was reading on the comments of last night's Inklings post. And I don't remember who the name of the person is on the comments, but you all know how to go to the comments so you can find her. And what if she was here? I would be so happy to meet her. Because she taught this amazing lesson that has not left my mind today. And some of you might have read it already. She talked about a chess game. Has anyone read the chess comment yet? Did you love it? Don't worry, I'm about to share it with you. I don't know anything about chess, okay? And thank heaven she kind of explained it to us, but she said in the game of chess, you usually have 3 things you're working on. There's the early game, the middle part of the game, and the end game. And there's a different strategy for every part of the game as you are going through that. But the greatest strategy throughout the beginning part of the game is to protect the queen. That's the strategy. Because at the end game, the queen becomes the most important player on the whole chessboard. Because she can move any direction she wants, and she can protect the king. And as she was talking about this, I thought to myself, isn't that so interesting to think about a prophet who keeps reminding us we are in the end game? And to think that the most powerful player in the end would be the queen, would be the women who would come in and help to protect the kingdom and everything the Lord has to offer. And I love the thought of that in 4 years ago or 8 years ago, maybe you could get your scriptures on Sunday and you were going to be fine. And I think to myself this, and I thought about this this morning. Do you remember when President Nelson said we need women who have a bedrock understanding of the doctrine of Christ and who know how to teach that with compassion and they're articulate? How many of you remember that? How many of you at the time were like, I want to become that woman? And don't raise your hand, but I just want you to think in your head. How many of you actually increased your scripture study at that time so you would become that woman? And a little bit I wonder if you looked out and was like, listen, I told you, I need women who have a bedrock understanding of the doctrine. And since it didn't work that many years ago, I'm just going to get you in your scriptures. I'll give you so much stuff that you can't afford to not be in your scriptures right now, right? He's telling us, labor, get in and start learning who you are, what your capacity is, and the doctrine that is going to be life-changing, not just for you, not just for your family, but for the entire kingdom. And I love the thought of that. Okay, anyone else? Yes. Yes. Oh. That's so good. So she picked the word continue for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is just to remind yourself to continue in the study, which that is such a good point. I have been thinking the last couple of days, how many of us are really going to make it to the end? Because it's so long. It's not till April, everyone. But how engaged are we going to stay? And how invested are we going to be? And I love that thought. I keep thinking about it, that I want to continue. I want to know what I'm going to know after 84, just like what I know now from 25. And I want to know from 107 what I'll know. And this is what I keep thinking to myself. What am I going to know? Do you ever think that? Like, what am I about to learn? What is my knowledge going to be? And I love, she used the word privileges, that we are going to be given privileges and responsibility according to the level of knowledge that we have. And we're preparing for that right now. And I love that although I feel the Spirit teaching me individually, and I know that's true for you, I also love knowing there is a group of us supporting and strengthening each other in this journey. Yeah, one more. Let's do one more. Oh, I love that, elect. And she loves the thought that all of the words combined together bring the thought of an elect woman. Did you have time when you went to get the cards to look at all those words laid out together? Was that a powerful experience for you? That was such a powerful experience for me to look at all of them laid out and think, we just learned about all of those words. We just became smarter in all of those things from chapter 25, and I'm so grateful for that. This morning I just started out and read that first verse in chapter 25. Hearken unto the voice of the Lord your God, while I speak unto you, Emma Smith, my daughter. And I thought to myself, oh, I am so grateful to be part of a group of daughters who have taken the time to hearken. And I just want to start out this whole event by saying to each one of you, thank you for being part of this journey with me. Okay, here is what is about to happen. We are going to let Barbara come up here right now. You are going to love Barbara so much. She's going to come tell us what she knows about Doctrine and Covenants 84, because does 84 feel overwhelming to anyone besides me? Yeah, because we don't usually study 84. And so Barbara is so good at section 84. She's really, really good at it. So this is going to be the tricky part. She is going to talk to us for a half hour, and I'm going to stand right in the back and give you warnings of how much time you have.
Please, I really appreciate that, actually.
Because she is so smart that I really want to take time for question and answer. I let people comment on Instagram for some questions, and there were two that were repeated hands down more than any other question. So I'm going to start off with those two once you start question and answer. But then you be thinking of yours, because we're going to do that. And then I thought you might love meeting Barbara. So once she is done and we've done the Q&A, she's going to go in the back corner of the store. Not because she's in trouble, just because there's more space there. And she won't have any books to sign, which we are so sad about. But your little card that has your word on it would be a really awesome thing to have her sign. And then you could just glue it right in your book, and you will have it. And you'll remember you met her on Inklings night. So she would be happy to sign your card. I forgot to tell you, all of these ladies have been given the oath and covenant of the priesthood on a little card that they can put in their scriptures or somewhere. Awesome. Because you're going to give them a challenge.
Sure am.
Don't forget the challenge.
Oh, I will not forget the challenge.
Yeah, let me dress you. We're having a
This is not the first time we've dressed
Yes, a
together.
wardrobe.
Okay.
This has to be so close to me.
You know what, this one?
Okay, I got it. Keep the microphone right here.
Okay, ladies, it really is a pleasure to be with you. I love the topic of the priesthood. I love the temple. I love the women of the church, and to bring it all together and to help each other is one of the things that I care about most in this life, frankly. So this last general conference, when President Nelson was speaking, I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit nervous because President Oaks had just given his talk that morning about how we shouldn't say more about something than we know, right? And I honestly, no joke, I was sitting in a plaza probably 20 seats away from President Nelson, and he started talking about the priesthood, and I thought to myself, oh no, he's going to do exactly what President Nelson did, President Oaks did. He's going to say that people are talking more about the priesthood than they should, and we really don't know a lot. And so I was like, I hope that wasn't my book. But he didn't. As you know, he did the exact opposite. He actually talked so much about the priesthood, and he invited the sisters to understand the priesthood, and he bore his testimony of women in the priesthood. And I sat there, and I'm going to be as honest and true as I can this one. I felt the Spirit confirm to me that what I've been working on for 2 years, and not that the book was perfect, I have so much more to learn, but that I was listening to the Spirit the entire time. And it was a great confirmation to me to just know that we were on the right track. And I know I wasn't the only woman. I know you guys were feeling it. I know a lot of people were feeling it. But for some reason, I had this impression over and over again to not give up, to write this book, to collect these stories, to collect these quotes, and put it together for the women of the church and the men of the church. Sometimes we say it's a book for the women, but frankly, I have more requests from state presidents and bishops for this book than I actually have received from women, which is really, really, really exciting for me. So, as excited as I was about President Nelson speaking in the October General Conference, I was just as giddy, maybe even more so, as crazy as it sounds, in the April 2018 General Conference and priesthood session for men. Many people will not understand this, but I'm going to give you a little background, and maybe this is going to fit as kind of maybe a little bit into my brain and into my heart as I study and as I teach the gospel. I taught seminary and institute for years. I teach at BYU. I really care about what is taught and how the gospel is taught. It's extremely important to me that we get it right. And I will share this too. I took that book and I probably had it reviewed by at least 10 different people who I knew were extremely doctrinally sound. And they probably reviewed that book. I probably had that book reviewed at least 50 times before I published it. I wanted to make sure I was not teaching false doctrine. That was extremely important to me. In fact, I actually said it as a book a number of times. If the doctrine is not correct and there's anybody who has any question about that, I don't want this book published. And knowing that, that was critical to me. I wanted the truth out. And if it wasn't true, I didn't want my name on it. I'm not saying, again, the book is perfect, but I am saying I was very cautious. And I hope you are too as you're studying. I hope you're very cautious about what you teach. I hope you're cautious about what you speak publicly about. So I'll give you this example. When President Nelson in April of 2018 talked about Doctrine and Covenants Section 84, I was so giddy. I'll tell you why. Because I wanted to write about Doctrine and Covenants Section 84. I had already studied that section. I'd already loved that section. I had already had the Spirit testify to me that that section was real. I had already memorized the Old Covenant of the Priesthood. I had already recognized and felt the Spirit confirm it to me, but I couldn't write it. Why? I'll tell you why. Because the prophet had never said it. And I will not go ahead of the prophet. I never will. So the prophet hadn't said it, so I couldn't write it and I couldn't publish it. But I could feel it and I could have a testimony of it. But in that general conference, President Nelson said Section 84, and then he actually used Section 84 verses, in that talk he said verses 19 through 22, and then he used Section 107, verses 18 and 19. In that talk he didn't actually say that, but in his footnotes, he had it there. And his quote actually is, he says this, "May I voice a concern? It is that too many of our brothers and sisters do not fully understand the concept of priesthood power and authority." And then he said in that quote, "I fear that too many of our brothers and sisters do not grasp the privileges that could be theirs." And then in the footnote, and for you guys it may not be that big a deal, but in the footnote he put Section 84, verse 19 through 22. And guess what I could do? Now I can publish it. Now I could teach it because the Spirit had already confirmed it to me. I already knew it was true. I had studied it ad nauseum, and now the prophet had said it, and I could write it without going ahead of the prophet. And I knew it was true. That's absolutely critical to me. And so I think to myself, okay, so what do we know about Section 84? Why does it really matter? We know a lot about Section 84. And I'm going to back up before I get to Section 84. I know many of you have my book. I saw a couple of you here. But if you don't, I'm going to explain something about priesthood that is extremely important that people often don't understand. Elder Renlund talks about how there are two definitions of priesthood. And we often talk about priesthood as if there's just one definition. So the bigger definition of priesthood is God's total power, right? The smaller definition of priesthood, the one that we commonly talk about in the church, is the power of God delegated to man on the earth to act in his name. This is the priesthood that we often have people memorizing, and this is the priesthood that we talk about at General Conference, most likely because it's men talking to men most of the time in priesthood session. This is what we usually see in seminary and institute manuals, because this is the part about the administrative structure of the priesthood. But the administrative structure of the priesthood is a very small part of the priesthood. The priesthood is God's total power. Does that make sense? So if you take this administrative part of the priesthood, I'm going to break that down for you now into two other circles. Since the time of Adam and Eve, there have been two priesthood structures. The patriarchal priesthood structure, and I'm going to share something with you that I think is extremely important because I know many women struggle with the term patriarchal. For those of you who know this, what does President Benson say another word for patriarchal priesthood is? I'm hearing it from you in the front. Familial priesthood. Isn't that great? I honestly was praying one day because I had a woman who was asking me this question, and this is my process of writing this book. Heavenly Father, I know this term patriarchal is difficult for many women, and I would like women to understand it without just turning it off because of this word. Many women don't have a problem with it at all, but I want to help women who do have a problem with this word. So is there a way that we can explain this better? And what is the answer? I had read President Benson's talk 20 times. And that paragraph had never stood out to me before. But that day, I was on my little bike, my little recliner bike. I read that, and it said, another term for patriarchal priesthood is familial priesthood. And all of a sudden I realized this has nothing to do with a man being in charge. This has everything to do with a husband and a wife as a family being together as Adam and Eve were, as Moses was, as Abraham and Sarah, and that's what we're going to see in Section 84 as well. It's going to bring us to Moses. It's going to bring us to Aaron. So we're talking patriarchal or familial structure of the priesthood already in Section 84, and many people don't realize that. But it's extremely important to realize Section 84 is a temple priesthood. Okay, so Elder Redmond, again, he talks about the big circle priesthood, and he says it's just like the earth. You have the big earth, and you have the little earth. You have the big earth, which is the world, you have a little earth, which is dirt and the sand. They're both earth, but just different terminology, the same word, but different meanings, although similar. That's the priesthood. So if we can keep that in our heads, that we have two organizational structures of the priesthood. The first one is patriarchal or familial. From Adam and Eve all the way through Moses and Abraham and Sarah, and all the way through Moses loses this priesthood, right? With the golden calf. Then we have the hierarchical structure of the priesthood. Elder McConkie actually says that the hierarchical structure of the priesthood comes into play when Jesus Christ comes to the earth. Because there was no longer a familial structure on the earth that God could restore his priesthood through. And so he needed a new structure. First presidency, quorum of the 12, quorum of the 70, and then other offices. So now we have another priesthood structure. Patriarchal, hierarchical, administrative. Does that make sense? So most members of the church, they think of priesthood. Up until recently, they've been thinking administrative, hierarchical priesthood structure. And so women will say, well, I want to be ordained to this priesthood office sometimes, or I want a priesthood power and authority, and they're thinking this. But could you imagine if the women understood this? If the women understood the temple, if the women understood that they do have the power and authority of the temple, that they have everything that every man has, and frankly, not to be demeaning, but who cares what the men have? We have whatever Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother want us to have. We have everything, and frankly, what more could we want than everything? Does that make sense? But sisters, I testify to you, if we understand the power that we've been endowed as President Nelson is going to help us and asking us to do, we will have very little, if there's any problem with this at all, because we will understand this, and this will be huge for us, meaning the patriarchal priesthood. So if you take Section 84 of the Doctrine and Covenants, you see immediately that this is what's being talked about. So if you have your scriptures, go there with me. If you have your phones, I would love to have you follow along. I love reading my scriptures, it makes me happy. Spirit comes in just by touching it, I think. Actually, not I think, that's true. That's a true point. Somehow the Spirit just is like, it zooms in when the scripture's open or the phone goes. So if you look right off the bat, section 84, and you see the dates, September 22nd and 23rd. I'm not going to go into this a lot, but I'm going to give you another teaching aid that I love when it comes to the Doctrine and Covenants especially. This looks like a scary book, and I promise you it's really not. It's the Joseph Smith Papers. I love this thing. I'm going to show you why. Because it says September 22nd and 23rd. And so I go to the Joseph Smith Papers. And, excuse me as I try to figure out my hands and pens and votes and everything just like. And I find September 22nd and 23rd. Seriously, it's the coolest thing, don't you think? And so I look at this and I say, oh, I can find the entire historical background of this section. I know exactly where Joseph Smith was. I know what he's thinking about. I know what the revelations are going at the same time. I get the historical introduction. I get literal words from Joseph Smith. And I can actually see the actual writing of Joseph Smith and the translators that were writing at the time. I can see it in English as well, and I can go crazy and work whatever I want to because it's a book and I write all over my books. And it's so fun. And you can actually say, no, I'm not just making this up. It's right here, Joseph was talking about it. This is the early days of the church, and this is proof that I'm not just making this up, right? I mean, this is so amazing. So you go to section 84 and you say, what was happening at this time? Well, he's talking about the temple. Because he's been talking about the temple since section 43. But Joseph Smith has also been talking about the hierarchical structure of the priesthood. So what we see during the restoration of the gospel is Joseph is receiving restoration regarding how to set up the church, the public church, and he's also receiving revelation on how to set up the temple and the family priesthood. He's receiving them at the same time. So sometimes you have to look and say, which one is he talking about? Is he talking about the priesthood structure, or is he talking about the temple and the family? So in section 84, how do you know? Just do me a favor and look at verses 2 through 5 on your own, and just look, and I would just invite you to mark, or just look at every time it mentions house of the Lord or temple. How are you doing? You can see that this is a priesthood. We're talking about the temple structure, the familial structure. This is what this section is. There are also parts where he's talking about hierarchical structure, which is why this section in some ways is very difficult. And frankly, it's why I am careful when I teach this section to not say definitively, this is what this word is, and this is what this verse is, and this is what he's saying. Why? Prophets haven't said that. So I'm very careful to tell the prophets what they should be saying. Right? I'm very, very cautious with that. But am I okay going through the scriptures with prayer in my heart and trying to figure it out? Of course I am. And are there some things that are very clear? Of course there are. Clearly this is a temple scripture. Clearly this part is talking about the temple. So then we continue on and we have this lineage. Well, we already know a little bit about this lineage because President Benson years ago told us that this is a patriarchal structure and this is a lineage, but that doesn't mean that these are the only people in the priesthood. It means the priesthood is being passed from father to son, and that's why it's termed patriarchal. But does that mean that Eve and Adam didn't both enter into the priesthood and receive their endowments? No. Adam and Eve both entered the temple. They both received their power. They're both endowed with power from on high. Those names then are how the priesthood was passed on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the only person who received the priesthood. I'm going to invite you to do something as you kind of go through, especially section 84. Think about the baptism that you have performed, that you have received, the covenant of baptism. Think about the initiatory, the actual initiatory when you went in with the temple. Then think about the endowment that you have received. and think about the ceiling. And I promise you, if you can think about the covenants that you have made as a woman in the temple, and the covenants you have made throughout your life with the Lord, Section 84 will really speak to you in a whole different way. So take, for example, we'll just go right here to verses 19 through 22. This is what President Nelson says we should be studying. So 19 through 22. And this greater priesthood administereth the gospel and holdeth the key of the mysteries of the kingdom, even the key of the knowledge of God. Okay, so I'm going to throw something out about keys. I did a personal scripture study on the topic of keys of the priesthood. I asked many students how many keys there were and who held keys. It became like this weird thing that I just thought was the most fantastic, misunderstood topic among students that I had. Many of my students said that priesthood keys are only for those who have an office or a calling which puts them in charge of presides over somebody else. Which is great, and they're close, but guess how many other keys there are? If I could show you my little chart, and someday I will do this, there are at least 40 different types of keys in the scriptures. So if we teach our young women, and we think to ourselves that the only one who holds keys are men, we miss the other 39. Does that make sense? So for women, do you understand how important it is when you go to 19 and you say, the keys of the Melchizedek priesthood, and the keys of the mystery of the kingdom, even the key of knowledge of God, in that verse? Do you understand that President Benson said that women of the church hold the key of the knowledge of God? What? I thought men only hold keys. No, women hold that key. And remember President Nelson when he actually talked about understanding Section 84, and remember what he said, not only will you be able to understand that section, but you will be able to have the knowledge to be able to understand that section? He's referring to this section because the section says you will have the key of knowledge. It's a beautiful insight, but sometimes we just look over it as if, no, that's man because it says key. No, most of the keys in the scriptures are for men and women. But there is one key in the hierarchical structure of the priesthood that is for the key of presiding. And so we just use our little circle and put every key in that circle as if it's the same for every key. It's not the same key. So study carefully the keys. Really make your list if you can. It'll be amazing what keys that you can find that women have in the church. I call them general keys. It's a good term. A general key that you receive. So in Section 84, sisters, can you receive the key of knowledge of God? Yes. When you go to the temple then, are you doing everything you can to use that key? Are you praying to Heavenly Father in the temple? Because I promise you, if there's one place in the whole world that Heavenly Father wants to teach you about His mysteries, about His knowledge, it's in His house. President Elder Bednar often said, I love this statement where he says, he doesn't go to the temple to find answers to questions, he goes to the temple to find questions, to answer when he studies the scriptures on his own. Imagine if we went to the temple to find out what kind of questions the Lord wants us to be asking. I have done that over and over again, and it has changed my experience at the temple. I often go to the temple now and I say, Heavenly Father, will you please help me to ask the right question or find the right question that I could be asking while I'm in the temple today? And there are many questions that I have asked that I go home during the week and I start studying. And I start studying very carefully. So can you find these mysteries? Yes. And how do you find mysteries? Only through the revelations of God. Elder McConkie actually says that the mysteries regarding the priesthood can only be taught through the Spirit. So does that mean you stop studying the scriptures? Of course not, because what does the Spirit do when you're studying the scriptures? It enhances, right? It enlightens, it grows, it glorifies. So when I have my time to study the scriptures, and President Nelson says spend time in the scriptures, but he also says spend time in the teachings of the prophets and the leaders of the church. You start reading books like parts from President Nelson, and you start studying a little bit about family and priesthood, and I promise you, you'll start understanding a little bit more about women's role in the priesthood. Even if he doesn't use the terminology, he lays it right out there. Elder Brennan is another good one. I've studied more and more books on this topic, and I've recognized, especially when I tie it into the temple and I tie it into the scriptures, it's like the Lord is using this miraculous cloud. He even talks about that right here in section 84. And he glorifies his children, and he is constantly showering us with more and more knowledge. Because that's a promise for those who study the scriptures. That's a promise especially for those who enter the temple and receive the priesthood associated with the temple. It's the keys and the mysteries of God. Good on that? Okay, there's much more I can share, but I hope that you're taking that. Emily just did a great job of having you guys think about deep study and deep learning. Can't get much deeper than that when you're promised by the Lord the keys and the mysteries of God. So, there's a lot more that you can study in there. I'm going to jump over verse 26, where he talks about the keys of the ministry of angels and the preparatory gospel. Notice he says in the lesser priesthood. This is one that I think has been understood a little bit better lately because the prophets have talked about this. But when it talks about the keys of the ministry of angels, now this is specific, and here it's talking about the Aaronic priesthood. So the Aaronic priesthood, regardless of who is the president of the Aaronic priesthood, is blessed with the keys of the ministering of angels. So then what does a key do? And I'm just going to answer these questions. I wish we had the time to have this little conversation. A key unlocks the door. So what's being unlocked? The ministering of angels. So who receives the ministering of angels? Everyone who makes the covenant. So one of the things I love saying to the young women, yes, the Aaronic priesthood or your deacon's class president, a quorum president, may have the key of the ministering of angels. But what does that allow him to do? It allows him to pass the sacrament to you. That's what he is allowed to do with that key. Because he holds that key, by partaking of the sacrament, you now have the ministry of angels. So everyone in this room, everyone in the world who makes covenants with the Lord, who has made their baptismal covenant and who takes of the sacrament is blessed with the key of the ministry of angels. That's right there in section 84. It's open for all of us. So then, we're going to jump over a little bit, and we're going to hit verse 31. There's so much in there. That word appendage, I really do challenge you to study that. Isn't it great? Let's throw this out to you. Maybe just something to think about. Elder Cook talked about how we no longer call the women's leaders auxiliary presidents. Well, if you think about auxiliary presidents, and you think about appendages, and you think about what that talks about as far as the different offices in the priesthood, and we no longer call them auxiliary leaders, but they're offices, it does something also with verses 29 and 30 of the Doctrine and Covenants. Just something to think about. I'm not going to tell you anything more than that, but I do challenge you to think about that a little bit more. So I'm going to jump over to 31. I want you to think about, and I'm not going to give you answers here, but I want you to think about the temple initiatory. And I know there's some people who have not been to the temple, and I'm not going to tell you more about the temple initiatory, except that it's preparatory to receiving your endowment, and preparatory to be endowed with power. And it's also initiatory where we are washed and cleansed, and that is Elder Boyd K. Packer. I'm always careful in talking about the temple. Elder Boyd K. Packer talks about that very openly in his book, The Holy Temple. Elder Bednar also talks about it in his last general conference talk, talking about temples, and he asks the members of the church to speak more openly about the temple, find out what you can study, find out what you can say, I should say, what you can talk about publicly, and talk about it. Because if we don't, it gets really weird for people. But the temple is not weird. The temple is awesome. I love talking about the temple. I love talking about the garments. I love talking about the covenants we make. I love talking about the questions of the temple. All of those are public. You can find all of those on the churchofjesuschrist.org. There's nothing that you can't talk about in that topic. There are a few things. But please, I beg you sisters, don't not talk about the temple because you don't know what to talk about. Find out what you can talk about and talk about it. Talk about it openly, talk about it sacredly, talk about it carefully, but talk. Help your women, your young men and your young women love the temple, okay? So, just throwing that out there for you. Okay, so if we go back into this, verse 31, thinking about initiatory. Therefore I said concerning the sons of Moses, for the sons of Moses and also the sons of Aaron shall offer an acceptable offering and sacrifice in the house of the Lord. Which house shall be built into the Lord? Notice we're talking about the temple again. And we're talking about Moses and Aaron building a temple and offering a sacrifice. Which house shall be built unto the Lord in this generation upon the consecrated spot as I have appointed. Are you getting this so far? Verse 32, and the sons of Moses and of Aaron shall be filled with the glory of the Lord upon Mount Zion, in the Lord's house, whose sons are ye, and also many whom I have called and sent forth to build up my church. Sisters, I'm going to make this statement, but often when the Lord is referring to his daughters, he doesn't necessarily change the gender. Sometimes he just calls, or I should say he doesn't. The scriptures, or those who write the scriptures, sometimes don't say daughters. Sometimes they might continue as sons, and that's a cultural thing that comes from the Bible, that means that we need to pay very close attention because sometimes we exclude ourselves when God isn't. Does that make sense? Be very, very careful. In fact, there is a study that one of my colleagues has done in regard to Brigham Young and all the writings of Brigham Young, and they found out that Brigham usually writes brethren, and then he'll continue, right? That's what the scribe wrote. But they actually went back to the original handwritten, the scribe, not the scribe's note, but other people who had taken notes at that time. And even though the scribe had just written brethren, almost every other person who was taking notes wrote brethren and sisters. So what we say, Brigham only said brethren, is because the scribe just wrote that because he was just writing shorthand. But he was actually referring to both. And so what we have is in some cases, not all, but in some cases, kind of a skewed version of who he's actually speaking to. So this is something to be aware of when you're reading the scriptures. Be cautious, be smart. Okay, so we're going to go back there. And the sons of Moses and of Aaron shall be filled with the glory of the Lord upon Mount Zion, in the Lord's house. So again, are we talking hierarchical or patriarchal, or familial, I should say? We're talking familial priesthood, as far as I can tell, right? I have to be careful with this. I haven't heard the prophet come out and say it's familial priesthood. But from the context and what President Nelson has said, and what President Elder Bednar has said, and what President Packard has said, and from what President Benson has said, and Elder McConkie has said, I am very safe in saying, I believe, that they're talking about familial, because I triangulated and made sure I am not saying something that hasn't been grounded already. Okay, so, whose sons are ye, and also many of whom I have called and sent forth upon my house, upon my church. If you want to, you can actually go to the cross references here, and you can look that we're talking about Exodus specifically. In this case, we're not going to spend a lot of time there, but we're specifically now talking about the temple, and we're talking about family. So I just want you to think about this now in temple terms. And remembering that President Nelson said that women need to better understand the power of the priesthood with which they have been endowed. And President Ballard said, we need the sisters to better understand the priesthood power which they have been given and the authority that they have received in the temple. And Elder Christopherson says that sisters need to be better understanding that their covenants that they have made give them power and authority. And President Nelson says that the power that you receive in the temple comes as a result of the covenants. And the more you keep your covenants, the more power you have. So if you understand those, and we have brethren leading with the sisters to get this, now go to these verses. The oath and covenant of the priesthood is typically memorized only by the men in my good 20 plus years of teaching religion. But now I'm realizing it needs to be memorized by the sisters too. Bueno? Good? Okay, bueno. Okay. Verse 33. For whoso is faithful unto the obtaining of these two priesthoods of which I have spoken, and magnifying their calling, are sanctified by the Spirit unto the renewing of their bodies. Sisters, I don't want to tell you what you have to do, but I'm just going to ask you to just do something. Forget about the hierarchical structure right now. Stay with me in the patriarchal structure. Stay with me in the familial structure. Stay with me in the family. Stay with me in the temple. Let the other one go for now. As if we cared as much about the temple as we do about the hierarchy. Does that make sense? Put yourself in the temple. Okay. They become the sons of Moses and of Aaron and the seed of Abraham and the church and the kingdom and the elect of God. Are you feeling this? Can you think about it? And I would challenge you this. If you don't and you have no idea what I'm talking about right here, and that's fantastic, Churches through God Bless America, I beg you to go to the temple. And I beg you to spend a lot of time doing initiatories. Because I know for a lot of times we go, I'm going to tell you something that's really bad and I should not admit this. My husband knows this about me. Sometimes, don't hate me, sometimes I go to the temple and I just do one initiatory and I run out. I take 5 minutes to change my clothes, go one initiatory, one name, and I run out of the temple. And people may say, Barb, you're really not spending time in the temple, but guess what? One life was just saved, one soul is on the way to having eternal life, and I received the power and the authority of the temple that day, and I was filled with bright light and knowledge from God, and I'm more effective at teaching the gospel, being a better wife, and being a better influence for God. And I know it would be better if I spent an hour, and I usually try to, and sometimes I really try to do initiatories, endowments, and sometimes I try to do sealings, and there have been times when I've done that all day. And there have been times I've gone to the temple once every day of the week. But sometimes I have literally 15 minutes. And I'll tell you another secret. I call the temple and I say, how long is the line? And they'll say, well, we can't even do promises right now. And I'm already in the parking lot. And if they say it's like a half an hour, I don't go. And if they say there's no line, I jet myself in there. I do 5 minutes and I'm out of there. That may be a cheap way of doing things, but let me tell you something. I am confident the Lord is pleased when his daughters are in the temple. period. Even if you just have to touch it, as President Watson said. I am a total believer. Okay, so we continue on. And also all they who receive this priesthood receive me, saith the Lord. For he that receiveth my servants receiveth me. So let me ask you a question. Does President Nelson teach, this is an obvious question, that women are endowed with priesthood power? Yes, he does. And so does President Nelson, and so does President Oaks, so does President Ivey, so does President Bell, and I can go down the list. So women are endowed with priesthood power. What's the difference in the wording? I don't know for sure, but I can read you context and some important information here, I think. So then finally, he that receiveth me receiveth my Father. And then the sisters, and he that receiveth my Father receiveth my Father's kingdom. And then I love this verse so much. Therefore, all that my Father hath shall be given unto him. And again, I used to put in there, shall be given unto her. And why did I put that? Well, Sister Burton, the president of our Relief Society in 2013 asked every single sister of the church to memorize the open covenant of the priesthood. That was 6 years ago, before President Nelson even made this statement. And she has the open covenant, and she talks about, please memorize this. Guys, sisters, I memorized the open covenant of the priesthood one day, right before I went to the initiatory, and to this day, my mind has been blown away by what I learned from the scriptures, but by more importantly, by what God, I should say probably the Holy Ghost taught me, because I was willing to pay the price to do what the General Relief Society president of the church told us to do. I am a firm and hardcore believer that when we are obedient to the prophet and we are obedient to the women leaders of the church, God will keep his promises and he will endow us with greater power, greater knowledge, and greater mysteries. But if we expect somebody else to give it to us, it's never going to come. God, and this is a President Nelson statement as well, God requires hard work. That's not me, that's actually President Nelson. God requires hard work. So if you continue with this, is there any more, sisters, that we would want than all that the Father has? I just can't imagine wanting any more than everything. And then all that God has, I can't even comprehend that. But that's what he's going to give to the sisters. And he's asking us, to the leaders of the church, not only study this section, but to memorize it. Then you have your time. And this is according to the oath and covenant which belongeth to the priesthood. I'm just going to ask again. In the temple, we make oaths and covenants. Therefore, those who receive this priesthood receive the oath and covenant of my Father, which you cannot break, neither can it be moved. So, sisters, as part of this invitation that Emily was talking about at the beginning, we are challenging you to study and memorize the oath and covenant of the priesthood. I cannot give you. I can't begin to express to you how much I know that the Heavenly Father will give you if you're willing to pay the price. And some of you will just say, well, I can't memorize. Guess what? I can't either. I'm horrible at memorizing. I have a good memory, but I'm horrible at memorizing. It stresses me out. Especially if somebody makes me have to repeat it to them or something. Like, it's really hardcore, difficult for me. But I did on this one. And frankly, I can't say that I have it all memorized right now. But I did at one point, and it's in my head, and it's in my heart. And every time I'm going through something out, and I'm reading my scriptures, and I'm just living my life and remembering when I'm by myself in a hotel room, some far place, I know that I have power and authority from God, and I know what I can do with it, and I know that I have a lot of lessons that people don't understand. Does that make sense? So, with that invitation, I'm going to throw something else at you, and I'm going to chat with Emily here. This is something else I just wanted to show you. This is I keep these journals, and I'm kind of weird. But this is, I believe that the Lord really does, he's the real deal on things like this. This is how he works with me. It may not be how he works with you.
Where do I go?
This is my thought journal. I always have a thought journal with me. And you can see some pages are falling out. But from time to time, you can even see where I'm actually being guided and I'm learning things. This is actually, I'm learning about the priesthood. I'm learning about hierarchical structure. You can actually see some of these things I'm just trying to figure out, but you can see I'm learning about unity here. I'm learning about priesthood, and I'm just randomly just writing notes. I just keep it available. But what's really cool, someday, if I ever have children, which I think I will, they're going to actually go to my prayer journal. This is a prayer journal I keep. And it's almost every day, sometimes every morning, every night, but I at least write some things. There are a lot of questions. But in my prayer journal, I have little stars every once in a while. And this one actually talks about the importance of studying and researching family, church, family, Utah, influence, rallying, things of that nature. I am praying in this and saying, Heavenly Father, I'm trying to understand this topic. Sisters, I am going to testify at a very important principle. You will find questions here, and you will find answers here. And here. When I die and somebody gets my journals and somebody gets my life, I'm going to get in that one. Get in there. It's like a notebook. Oh, that's not it. I don't know. Okay. Oh, it's a and here. I know this sounds like a lot, but this is my proof to the world that God speaks, and that God answers questions, and that God cares about his daughters, and that revelation is real, and the mysteries of God are available. Because you can actually go to the day, in many cases, find the question I asked, and within a month, you'll find the answer. But sister, sometimes you'll go to the day, and it'll be 10 years. And sometimes you'll go to the day, and there is no answer. And sometimes you'll go to the day, and literally it's 20 years. But you will see God. I promise you. One of the challenges I have to memorizing Oath and Covenant of Priesthood is to learn by what you hear, see, and feel. This is Elder Scott. Write down those things and then be committed to do them. A price has to be paid for the price for the jewels and the pearls that God is giving to his daughters. I absolutely know this is true. I know God wants us to be endowed with this power. I know he'll bless you as you memorize the Oath and Covenant of Priesthood. But more importantly, or equally as important, as you study and listen carefully to the Spirit and pay the price to receive the glory and the kingdoms of God that our Heavenly Father and our Heavenly Mother are promising to us. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk to you for a second. Will you look up power in there? Was this the journal that you had?
It is.
Okay, I want to just quickly recap the challenges we were just given, okay, because there were several, and I can't remember the first. The second one was to study keys. Does anyone remember what the first one was? The first challenge, she told us what we should study. Do you have it? Anyone? Well, we're all going to have to rewatch the video. The second one was keys, she told us to study. So you want to make sure you are adding that into our study. I should have asked all of you to say what you wrote down that you heard her saying. Yeah, clear it back and yell really loud. That's right. Every time we say temple or house of the Lord in 84, that was exactly what it was. Then keys. Okay. Good. Think about the baptism, initiatory, endowment, and sealing. I want you to be capturing these because these are things in the next several weeks we want to be focusing on as we are doing our study right now. I love also that she talked about those 2 journals. So you might want to write those down. Even if you're not going to do that for the rest of your life, you might want to do it for the rest of this study. So you need a prayer journal. And do you call the other one a study journal?
Thought journal.
A thought journal. A prayer journal and a thought or revelation journal.
I call it a thought journal because sometimes I'm just thinking, and sometimes in the process of thinking, the Lord speaks. So I call it my thought journal because sometimes it's just me, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, write that fast.
Then you want to be looking for examples in Scripture of patriarchal or familiar priesthood. Familial.
But familiar is good. Yeah, we're all familiar with the priesthood.
Familial. And the last thing I'm going to ask you to add to your, memorize the Oath and Covenant of the Priesthood. Don't forget that part. And the last one I'm going to give you an invitation for. This is a really interesting one because we were at Time Out for Women last week. And Barbara had an interesting experience where she was woke up in the middle of the night and prompted to study the word power in relation to the power of God. And I thought it was so interesting when it happened there, but this morning I woke up, and those of you who have looked at Inklings from last night know the quote that is from President Nelson talks about that we've been given 2 gifts. And one is the gift of the power of God, and the second one is the gift of knowledge to understand how to draw upon that power. And I went to bed thinking about it, and I woke up this morning and clear as day heard the Spirit say to me, you don't understand what the power of God is. So, because I have a really good friend who had that same experience a week ago, and she didn't have the crazy day I had today a week ago when she got woken up in the middle of the night. You might have had a crazy day today, but she wrote down what she was going to study to understand the power of God, and I think it would be so helpful for you to be able to write it down. So, did you find it?
I have
She's giving you warning.
No, you're good. Church is true. I love it.
Okay.
That's my answer to everything. The church is true,
Oh,
so
you
that's
have the
fine.
picture.
That's
That's
for
perfect.
sure.
You have the picture. Yes, take over.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to back up a little bit with Emily. I have studied the power of the priesthood in depth on many occasions. I was trying to find those with this notebook. I often study by topics in this bigger notebook, and so I have power on there, I have love on there, I have endowment, so I'm kind of a quirky studier. I like to study a lot. So,
And you see how she likes words? Are you starting to understand the power of studying words? Yeah.
yeah, that's actually extremely important to me. So I had studied power before, and I thought that maybe I put it in the book. So let's all go back. So in the middle of the night, as Emily said, I felt a strong impression that I needed to teach the women about the power of the endowment, about God's power. And so what I usually do is I keep paper and pen somewhere by my bed, and usually I'm like trying to figure out where it is. But in this case, I just grabbed my phone and I just reminded myself, remember to study the power of the. Long story short, I couldn't sleep after that, so I just got up and started studying it, right? I mean, why even try? Because I knew I was going to be speaking in a few hours. I didn't have time to do both, sleep and study. So I started going through the scriptures. I didn't have my other notes, so I was kind of on my own again with the Lord, and I went through the scriptures and I started studying the power of God. I studied using the topical guide. I went to a bunch of different...
Look up.
Okay, so I looked up power, first of all. I looked up Jesus Christ and his power. I looked up priesthood because I know priesthood is the power of God. I looked up virtue, because many of you know that virtue and power are actually the same word, so I looked that up just to see what I can find in there about virtue and power. I looked up authority. I looked up influence. I looked up a number of things, but I tried to really focus more on that power. And I looked up temple, and I looked up endowment. So those kinds of things. When I was done, as I was writing, I just kept a list. I don't have this journal with me. I have a number of different things I write on. But I have this, I took a picture of it because they're helping. So these are some of the things, some of the powers that God has given to us, especially in regards to the temple. So this is priesthood power in regards to the temple. So I get more specific with my questions with the Lord. I also know that the more specific you are with the Lord, the more specific He is with you. P.S. Firm believer in coming up with really good questions. Okay, so the power of the endowment. Power to deal with the burdens, obstacles, and temptations of our day. The power to endure. The power to receive revelation. The power of the ministering of angels, which is set right there in 84. The power to commune with God. The power to be heirs along Jesus Christ. The power to detect deception. The power to part the veil. The power to resist temptation. The power to be protected, enlightened, and stronger. The power to thwart the evil forces. The power to use our gifts and capabilities with greater intelligence and effectiveness. The power to strengthen the family. The power to preach and teach. The power to protect, strengthen children and families. The power to cast off Satan, and the power to see clearly and discern between good and evil. That was just a morning of studying, sisters. And yes, I said I studied it before, but I'm confident that you can find those.
Okay, so we're going to jump into the questions. The first question that someone asked was actually, how do you come to understand the power of God or the power of the priesthood? So there would be your first answer. The second question that I think was really interesting, and we had so many people ask it, so I'm going to let her answer this. And then you'll be thinking if you have questions, and we have a few minutes to take a few questions. We had a number of women say, I have daughters who really struggle with this idea of men and the priesthood and really the hierarchy. And how do you teach your daughters what their role is within the church? So we're going to let her take that one. And maybe give, I know you can give us so long answers, but just give us places where to go. Because I'm guessing, how many of you have a question you want to ask, actually? That would help us to know how much time to take. Does anyone have a question?
Oh, I hope you do. Even if it's not for me, I hope you have a lot of questions.
Okay. Okay, well then maybe you can take a little.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Okay. I love Elder Bednar one time where he said, for those of you whose questions I answered, I'm really sorry, the Holy Ghost does a way better job than me.
Oh, that's.
I couldn't agree more with him. So how do we talk to our women? Okay, maybe a couple of things. Number one, once again, I think that we as women in the church really do have a duty to help our daughters, help the young women understand the temple. I don't think we spend enough time with it. I don't think we understand it enough as women, and I will tell you something, as a teacher, if I don't understand something, I usually don't teach it very well. And I usually just frankly ignore it. I remember for a long time I ignored Adam and Eve. I really did. Like, we get to 2nd Nephi chapter 25, and I'd be like, nah, somebody else can teach that in their life. They have 100 years to live, right? They'll find some man who's smarter than I am. So I actually just didn't. I just skipped the fall completely. Like, how bad is that? So what did I do? I started studying the fall. So what do I love teaching now? The fall. But if we don't study the temple, and we just say, I don't know enough about that, go find it somewhere else, go ask somebody, who are they going to ask? Google? Nobody? Some random book that they find by some person? I promise you they will find answers, and they're not going to be good ones. So sisters, take upon yourself the responsibility to help the younger generation by doing what the prophets are asking us to do and study the temple, even if you don't care. Just do it for them. Do it for them. So that's my first one on that one. Second, I think we have to help, I know we have to help the young men and young women understand that it is not a competition. We are in this together. And what are we in it for? To save souls. And why are we saving souls? Because we love people and we want to have eternal life and exaltation. When I was in high school, I remember my dad brought home a box of 100 copies of the Book of Mormon. And it was family home evening, and he had all this writer testimonies in it, and then he put a piece of paper in there, and it may be really cheesy to a lot of people, but it taught me an important lesson. In the paper, it just said, I understand that most of you do not believe in the Book of Mormon, you have no understanding of what this book is. But I hope someday that we can all be together in the eternities, and I think this book may actually help you in the process. Bill Morgan, right? And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, he's sending it to all these people, we don't know any of them, and what are they gonna think? But the reality is, what did my dad care about? He could care less about being embarrassed. What he cared about was the salvation of souls. And so if we can help each other recognize that we're here to save each other, and we can do this. Heavenly Father is not saying men are more important or women more important. He's saying all of my children are important, and we are in this work together to save souls. And there are things that women can do, and there are things that men can do. And being ordained to a priesthood office may be really important for the men, but God is telling us there are things that are also important for the women. And so do women have power and authority? According to President Oaks, yes, they do. And frankly, it's the same power and authority that the men have. And very few men have keys that women don't have, but they are ordained to priesthood offices. But there are so many things that we can do together as women. So I think one of the biggest things that we can do is help our young women understand that we are not in competition, it's synergy. And when we all work together, we are going to save souls and have power throughout the whole world. If they could just grasp the temple and they could grasp the power and authority they already have and work together and not against, would be really, really helpful.
And I think it would be awesome. I know there is a young women's group somewhere that is watching the Facebook Live tonight at 7. They've gathered all of their young women together to watch it. And if you have daughters that are asking that question, don't be afraid to invite them to be part of this study. Like, more than one answer, one 5-minute answer, would be the opportunity for them to actually get in and do this study with you. And I teach youth, I teach seminary kids. They are capable of doing this study and following along. And so don't be afraid to invite them in to that. And they wanted me to just say quickly, this is going to be up and live forever on LDS Living's page. So if you have daughters or you have friends or you have people who you want to experience this event, they will be able to do that. And for those who are not participating in Inklings right now, we've also had a lot of people asking how we become part of this study, and it is so easy, just emilybellefreeman.com/Inklings. You can jump right in, get the journal, it's free, and just join with us. We will tell you how to participate, and it's not too late. Just jump in where we are. We've got so much ahead of us. Just jump in where we are. We probably have time for 2 more questions. Is there anyone who has something you would love to ask Barbara while she's right here? Yeah.
Regarding the priesthood women, obviously, is it something that we're born with or just have as women? I mean, it's something
That's a great question. So regarding the priesthood in women, is it something we are just born with, or how exactly do we, would I say, receive that?
So I have to give you an I don't know and a yes and a no. How's that? Have I heard and had very convincing people teach me that it is something that women are born with? Yes. Do I have anything doctrinally definitive where a prophet, first presidency, member of the Quorum of the 12 has taught that definitively? No. And so would I ever teach that? Never. I am very careful, again, not to go ahead of the brethren. That's extremely important to me. But,
Explain that.
yeah, yeah. So President Nelson actually talked about women being endowed with priesthood power. So let me start with this. Even before we get to that, Elder Anderson and Elder Christofferson both talk about every time we make covenants with the Lord, our power is being increased, right? And so if we look at the overall picture of what priesthood is, and we're talking about our power being increased, then we would say the moment we start making covenants, then we start having power. And therefore, the moment we start making covenants and start having power, we start having priesthood. Is the first covenant we make baptism on this earth? Yes. And pre-mortality, there's more. And so that's why I just kind of stay clear of that answer. I don't know enough to know. And as President Oak says, we say too much about things we don't know enough about, right? So I'm being safe on this one. So then I would say, when do women really receive that priesthood? If you want to specifically refer to priesthood you're endowed with, this is President Nelson's quote, where he says, "Those who are endowed in the house of the Lord receive a gift of God's priesthood power by virtue of their covenant, along with the gift of the knowledge to know how to draw upon that power." So women receive the power of the priesthood, specifically are endowed with priesthood in the temple, but women are also receiving the hierarchical structure priesthood the moment they receive a calling. So if you have an 8-year-old girl who receives a calling to be dropping off flyers at the neighbor's house, well, then an 8-year-old girl has priesthood power and authority. Does that make sense? The moment there's a calling and she has been set apart, she has priesthood power.
And I think studying that one line, by virtue of the covenant, would be a really awesome thing to add to our phrases this week. It's just so interesting to think about what is President Nelson trying to tell us right there. One more, yeah, right here.
So,
I'm gonna ask you this. Really.
So how do you, since you've studied this and are trying to have a priesthood in your life, how do you use the power of the priesthood? Because that's my biggest question right now is like, hey, I have it, how do I use it?
I love that. That is a great question.
In a number of ways. So I was just reading to you that little list I made, and I wish I had my book so it wasn't so awkward on my little phone to go back to this list, but it's still here regardless. I'm gonna wax cautious again. What did President Nelson ask the sisters of the church to do to understand how to use God's power? He asked you to receive personal revelation. So I'm going to be careful and say, if I start telling you how to use that power, I'm going ahead of President Nelson. But because the scriptures do have a couple of things in there, I'll have you think about some things, but I'm not going to give you the answer.
Do you love that about her? So
I'm very cautious. I'll tell you why I'm cautious. I need God to trust me. And if I am not trusted by God, He will not give you revelation. I am not going to go there. I refuse to burn bridges with God. I just can't do it. I can't afford it. Your salvation is more important to me than that. So, and the salvation of all the people I love. But I'll just give you one. What if one of the powers that we receive from God is the power to detect deception and to cast off Satan? Again, sisters, I'm going to ask you until I'm blue in the face, think about the temple. So maybe learn how to use the power. And maybe you learn to use what that power is. But I'm not going to tell you how to use that power, and I'm not going to tell you what to do to use that power. I'm going to tell you to go to the Lord and receive personal revelation, because we have a prophet of God on the earth begging you to do that. But it's there, and the power is real. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to use it, but I can tell you it's real, it's true, and I use it.
Okay, did you love learning from Barbara? Was this awesome? Yes.
And remember, we love each other. Okay, yeah, bye.
Okay, so I'm gonna let Krista come back up. She's gonna end this event for us. Let me tell you what is gonna happen right now. You are gonna have the opportunity. Oh, yes, I will right now.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you are interested in knowing more about women in the priesthood and what you can learn from Barbara, let's talk about places where you can find her. So the book is gonna be one. Chris is gonna come up and talk to you about the book. There's a 15% off if you buy it tonight because they're sold out. They're just trying to make it as easy as they can for you to be able to get it. And it will ship to you, and you'll explain that in a minute. Also, this is interesting. She just announced to me in the bathroom, and I can't resist telling you.
We love bathroom talk.
That Morris and Murdoch just asked her to do a tour this summer in July on women in the priesthood at the church history sites, which would be amazing. So if that's something you're interested in, you probably can look up over on there.
If you have any interest in that, just email me at Barbara Morgan Gardner. That's the site I use just for things like that, .com. That's not even throw out there. This is
speaking or anything else you're doing?
I am. I'm speaking at next Friday. Oh my gosh, what's the name of that thing? It's a podcast. No. Okay, you know what? Put me on the spot right now.
Listen.
I'm speaking a lot of rapid fire.
I'll put it up.
but yeah,
I'll put
she
it
did.
up on my site. I will give her where she's going to be. So if you have people who are interested in the topic, we will make sure you can find Barbara and what she is teaching right now because she's doing such a great job of being a voice for this for all of us. Kristen,
More good.
More good.
More good is this
Look
next
for the
Friday.
More Good podcast. There'll be more on there. Do you want to talk? Do you want me to talk? Where's the book? I don't know where it is.
I have a book.
Okay,
I know
you
it's a
have like
miracle,
10
but I do
books.
have a book. Oh, where's the camera? That's the precious
Oh,
of
are
that.
those real books?
Coveted.
Those are about street value right now. Okay,
I just do that for my own personal journal because I actually do keep a journal, as you know. Oh, fun. I am a journal keeper. Thank you. Love you guys.
okay, let me explain the book situation. We are going to have Emily and Barbara go back to the back and do a book signing. We have lovely books to choose from, except 3. And the reason being is because we have a 7 o'clock meeting for this exact same discussion again coming in, so we need to have our sisters go back here. You will get, if you pre-order the book, The Priesthood Power of Women, or Don't Miss This, or the Don't Miss This Journal, tonight you can get 15% off. All of the associates, this is a little hint to them, will have these in their hands and we can give it to you, okay? We are not shipping the book though, so I'm just kidding. Yes, you'll have to pay shipping if you live far away, but we'll hold it for you, or we can even, if you'll tell an associate to enter in the comments, we can say, well, I live closer to Orem. Will you send it to the Orem store when it gets here? Tell them that, associates, take good note. And friends, guess what else I found out? Don't miss this, the actual book will be in our store at the beginning of next week.
Oh, that's so fun.
So
We need to tell them. I need to tell them.
She'll tell you.
This is a little confusing. How many of you even follow Don't Miss? We don't know, but okay. There's 2 books, and we did not do a good job of explaining that because you're talking with 2 really creative people. So there is a devotional that looks like this book that just takes every single chapter in the Book of Mormon and it tells you our very favorite verse in that chapter and why we love it. And there's a story or there's an experience or there's something. It's more of a devotional. You could use it in your 5-minute daily scripture study with your family. Then there's going to be the journal, the study sheets that 1,000 people told us we do not want to print those out ever again because we hate doing that. So LDS Living has partnered with us to help us get that out to you, and you bless David every day from now until January that he drew all those papers in 2 months for all of next year, and they are done. And so that we're doing pre-orders for because we were worried how many you would want, and that we wouldn't have enough by January 1st. We just want to make sure you have them if you want them. So there, those for those 2 days.
Okay, perfect. And the date we have for the journal is mid-December. I realize that's not a date, but it's a time frame. So, mid-December, but you go and order your happy hearts out. And make sure, ladies, that you take your stuff with you when you go to the signing because somebody's going to come swipe your seat in just a few minutes. Okay, ladies, thank you. This has been wonderful. This is the first time we've done this, so thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so you're going to be able to find this. Again, I told them once, but I'll tell you again, and you make sure I say it right. LDS Living Facebook page is going to be permanently there too, but it's also going to go on the LDS Living YouTube channel. And we will have a debate if we're posting both shows or what we are doing, and I will update you on my Instagram stories. Because what if the second one has nothing to do with the first one, then we're going to want all of it. So Colin, that might happen. Okay, and we love Colin, because he just does whatever makes you all happy. So, okay, go back and meet Barbara. That's what you want to do.